Welcome back to Garage and Gadgets. Before we get to this gadget, let's talk about the garage, because you've probably noticed it's different than my normal garage. This is where it all began. This is my childhood home and the garage that's attached to it. This is where all the vehicles that I've pulled out of garages and fields and back lots of taxi companies and dragged them home and restored them, got them back on the road. This is the garage that it all began in. Matter of fact, right outside that garage door is where me and my dad were working on a 68 Bel Air, and I fell in love with working on old cars. So, this is an engine I picked up off of Facebook, and sitting on the floor over there is the transmission that came along with it. With the Plymouth, I decided, to start looking for parts that I can mothball, put in the back corners of various sheds and garages and what have you. And I ran across this, and I got a heck of a deal, and the more I look at it, the less of a heck of a deal I got. But I got this motor and transmission for practically nothing. The guy said it came out of a 1931 Plymouth, but for reasons I'll show you in a second, I don't know if that is necessarily correct or true. But what I was thinking was we could tear apart this engine, see what its health status is, whether it's just going to be a pile of parts that may or may not need to be used someday, or whether we can actually turn this back into a running, viable engine. Time will only tell. We'll have to pull the head off and take a look at the cylinders and pistons and what have you. I do know that the engine does rotate and turn over, but let's get a closer look at this engine. Looking at the passenger side of the engine, you can start off by seeing the fuel pump is just missing, carburetor's missing, the exhaust manifold's broken, the distributor is heavily damaged, along with the vacuum line for the vacuum advance. The breather pipe that comes here is in a box over there. I took it off so I can get the bell housing off to mount this to the engine stand. Coming around to the other side of the engine, or the front part of the engine, like I said, this is highly damaged. The water pump, I'll be kind of curious to see how it goes. Spinning this, it feels gravelly, but that may be just bearings and packing. But overall, this is the real rough side of the engine. Let's take a look at the other side of the engine. Here's the driver's side of the engine. The reason why I think this is a 32 is most obviously the casting date is 2/8/32. So very hard to believe that it would have gone into a 31. Now the car could have been 31 because, interestingly enough, the pad where the VIN would be is blank. So this either was a service engine, a replacement engine that never got a VIN stamped into it, or sometimes these engines were put into tractors, they were put into water pumps, generators. It's an engine, whatever you needed an engine for. So it could have originally been a service engine or something else that ended up in that car. Something that's also interesting is the oil filter. Mine doesn't have this, but that was something that was available to newer, later vehicles. Still has the generator, and the starter I took off along with the bell housing. That's pretty much it. The interesting parts were the date and the fact that there's nothing on the VIN pad. So with that, let's start taking off accessories and see what we ended up having. Now what is going to make this interesting is I just have a handful of hand tools. I don't even have my good hand tools, so hopefully I have everything I need. I'm going to start by taking off this generator. Once we get this loosened up, I should be able to take that belt out. We can start pulling off some of this random stuff on it, brackets, the oil filter. We'll have to drain the oil. Like I said, I overfilled all of this with the intention of trying to keep everything kind of in an oil bath so that it wouldn't rust up on me. It's been sitting here for a little bit. Everything on this engine has about 100 years worth of grease and oil on it. Loosen up that I can, Now there's a belt that has seen some decades. Now it is completely possible to still find rebuilt parts and rebuild kits for these parts, so we'll have to play around with that, see what we can find. All right, what do we want our next part to come off? Probably these couple items on the top, the water neck and these couple brackets. We can kind of finish up this side, and then I'll join you guys on that side where we can start fighting with those manifolds. I do have my turbo torch. Let's see how that works. But let's try to take this stuff here off. Well, I thought I brought an extension, and I did not. So let's see. Can I get this onto anything? I can. There we go. Just needed a little bit more torque. You gotta be careful hitting on this stuff because it's old cast iron, which is known to be brittle. All right, no thermostat, and well, what you would expect to see inside of an old head like this. But can we get this hose and clamp off of here? Nope. Okay, so all this is just going in there. All right, let's see. Let's try to get this next. Now, you might be surprised at how easy all these bolts are coming off. And I have been, over the last couple months, every time I swing by here, spraying down this entire engine with every type of penetrant oil you can think of. Just spray a whole can over the whole engine. And in hopes of making this simpler, which so far it seems to have worked. That the inside of this oil filter housing has an interesting chemical smell to it. So, we got a spring that's holding us up. Hastings 310. We got ourselves a surprisingly heavy filter. Yeah. Keeps oil cleaner longer. Densely packed filtering medium. And here's your mythical engine sludge. It's kind of interesting. I'll set this over here. Let's see if we can get the rest of this off of here. It looks like a couple almost brake line fittings, and this should all come out. Let's see. Alright, so the feed is a 3/8 line that broke free nicely, but I can't get more than a quarter turn out of it because everything seems to be in the way. Oh my, how many threads is this? There we go. All right, got our banjo bolt for our feed. And we'll set this here for now. This is a bigger size, maybe a 1/2 inch. Yeah, 1/2 inch. Okay, so it looks like the only thing left holding this filter on is this one head bolt. All right, there's the housing. And while we're at it, take this one off. One of the things that was concerning me when I took this engine apart to see what condition it was in, you know, like whether it was froze or what have you, I wanted to get oil inside the cylinders. These spark plugs are so rusted, there was nothing left for a wrench to grab onto. I ended up just grabbing it with a pair of vice grips and rocking it back and forth and breaking them free. So we will definitely be chasing those threads, making sure that they are good and healthy and that these old plugs didn't eat too far into them. Let's take the oil pressure line and engine temp sensors off, and then this half of the engine is pretty much done. This is just going to get thrown away. It's all busted and cracked up. All right. Yeah, a little afraid it broke free so easily with that. I was afraid I stripped it or something. That is this half of the engine stripped. There is a cover for like the water jacket, like a bolt-on kind of soft plug thing. Let's see if there's one on this side here. No, it would have been where that cover is. That I'm going to leave on. We'll worry about that once we go to clean the engine. We may or may not take that off, but this half of the engine is done. Let's work on the front. Let's take the water pump off, which is tight to say the least. Let's start with seeing if we can get these fan blade bolts off. Soaking this thing down has got to have really helped. I did not expect these to come off that easy. At the same time, I don't expect that to come off easy either. Let's see. A little bit of tapping will help. All right. Well, that's off. What are the chances that I get that off? Probably not at all. Yeah, I don't see that coming off. came off. All the messing I've done with this engine, never thought to try that. All right, so that looks like, these look like bolts for the front cover. Looks like the water pump is just these here, and there is pretty much no access whatsoever onto getting them with something other than a wrench. So let's all right, coil wire. So, well, I figured this was going to give me more of a fight, but like I said, I have soaked this thing down, I can't tell you how many times, while trying to get prepared. So with all the bolts off for the water pump, I should be able to give it a couple good whacks. Hopefully break the seal. All right, that took a lot of fighting and the pulley broke from getting hit, but this thing is so seized, I doubt it would have ever have pumped water again. The water jacket is full of leaves. There must have been a mouse that got in through this neck and made a home inside the head. So this will add to the list of parts that we need to get a replacement for. Hopefully we can find one. But this block is definitely going to need to get flushed. A lot of fluff. Might have to take that cover off just so we can hose it out before putting it back together. All right, looks like the distributor is a normal little clamp thing. Let's see, is there any chance of this breaking free? Flat blade screw. Oh, I would not have bet that. I would not have bet that at all. There you go. I do not have hope for these. There are these two bolts and then accompanying two bolts here that take these manifolds off. Exhaust manifolds on a car that's 20 years old is asking for a lot. Something this old, probably not going to happen. I'm thinking the best thing we can do, hit these with some heat and see if we can get it to break free, because it has to come off anyways. Let's see if we can get it to come off nicely. And it looks like somebody tried to weld this broken manifold once before. Welding cast iron is difficult, saying the least. All right, let's go get some heat. Start trying to see if we can break these apart. See if we can get this out of there. Let's see if we have any luck with any of this. Ooh. Oh, we came so close. Let's see if we can get this on camera. There's a split right there. I don't know if you can see it. All right, throw this in the trash pile. Okay, so that now gives us access to our next set of nemesis. Now the question is, do I want to try this? Do I want to try taking this off and leaving the studs, or do I want to try to take the studs out of the block? Let's try these two in the middle for the intake, because it looks like these are studs. All right, let's see if we can get these out. Nice. That came out. Well. Yeah, I was afraid that was going to happen. Oh well. Sheared the bolt off, but we got one off. Now we got to try to get those off. I don't have any real hope for the rest of these, but we'll see. All right, that came off clean. Let's see if we can convince this bracket to break free. I wonder, am I able to use something like this? Let's see how badly I can burn myself doing this. There you go. Let's set this here where it could catch the concrete on fire. All right. Well, that's promising. If I can get that off, there's a chance I might be able to get that one off. All right. So it looks like this got pulled out a little bit, and they used this giant nut as a spacer. There we go. See if we can wiggle this off. All right, there's the other one. We'll put this here. All right. Before we start hammering on this to get it out of here, I'm going to open the garage, let it air out. All right, so we've got those two braces off. Now, something that you always need to keep in mind when you're dealing with old cast iron, when you heat it, you got to be mindful of that, because when it cools, like when I opened up the garage door and the big rush of cold air came in, this decided to jettison itself. I'm not too broken up about it. It was already broken once, poorly welded, and then broken again, and then finished off a third time. So not too worried about this, but if you're trying to save these parts, you want to be a little bit more careful with the heat, the amount of heat where you put the heat, because that all can affect everything. All right. As I get ready to start pounding this, looking at the intake manifold, it actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. So I might try to take this one bolt out, because I'd like to save it if I can. So with that, let's see if we can just get it with the straight impact. There's still quite a bit of heat in these parts. Nope. No, those are officially one piece. All right, so with some hitting and some prying, let's try to get these manifolds off. So even though we took these two nuts off and this here is out of the way, those studs go through the manifold. So I got to kind of walk it off of those two studs, and then this should fall off all as one assembly. It's going to be another slow process. Okay, that manifold did not come off nicely or easily and ended up breaking these two studs. They were just rusted solid into that manifold. Let's use some heat and see if we can get this to rock out and at least get 2 of the 4 bolts. These are going to take a lot of effort and tools that I do not have with me right now to get out. Nope. Those will have to be dealt with another way. Let's take off the cylinder head, see what the cylinders look like, because if the cylinders are all ruined, there's no real point in trying to save all of that. So let's work on that next. All right, so all right, that's all the head bolts. We should be able to give it a few gentle taps and then kind of walk it up. It's almost there. Come on. There we go. Here we have it. Here's the cylinder head. Looks pretty good. A lot of carbon buildup, but that's to be expected. I don't see anything that would have said bad head gasket. And I don't see any cracks in it that would make me think bad head. One of the things that I'm really interested in, because I cannot find any evidence one way or the other online, is whether these have hardened valve seats. The six-cylinder, everybody pretty much agrees that the six-cylinder did, but nobody really agrees on whether the four-cylinder did. That is important for leaded fuel, non-leaded fuel. The exhaust gases are corrosive, and when they whip around the valve and out the exhaust, they can eat away at that seal, hence what the lead was for. So it's one thing that I will be keeping a little bit of an eye on as we dive a little bit deeper. Let's try to get this off here. I can tell you the water cavity on this engine would have overheated if we tried to run it. The water cavity was just completely caked full of junk. All right, head gaskets. Oh, I see a couple things stamped in here. There's an 11, there's a 0. A lot of carbon. A lot of carbon. Oh, carbon and dead bugs. But what I am not seeing is evidence of a hardened valve seat. There's a bird that apparently lives in this garage, and it just scared me half to death and back again. Let's drain the oil so I can roll this and show you what's going on. I would say that looks like milkshake, but looks mostly like grease. Chunky, very, very chunky. Oh yeah. But this engine desperately needed to be cleaned out. All right, let's see if we can get you guys a good vision of what's going on in here. So, what came out of the crankcase was truly terrifying, but none of these cylinder walls look all that terrible. I don't see any deep scratches or grooves. There is a ring ridge, but that is to be expected with an engine with as many miles as this is. But I don't feel anything that makes me think that these cylinders are bad. But that oil pan, that crankcase is just chocked full of all kinds of terrifying things. Let's see if we can break these free and take a look inside of the valve train. See what kind of horrors we have there. Well, that's promising and nice. They were loose. Oh, but they are gooey. That bolt came out with a bunch of fibers on it. Makes me wonder if some kind of critter got in there. All right. Now we got a mouse house. I don't know why. That seemed like a good place to live, but somebody thought so. All right, we'll put this next to the cylinder head. And let's try to evict our little buddy. Of course, I missed the bucket. Okay, Looking at this, I see a few things. Let me see how well you can see it. Why don't you, come on, zoom in real quick. Okay, so right here is your camshaft. And there'll be a gear running the oil pump off of that. And then there'll be another gear dealing with the fuel pump. But here are your lifters, and here is the jam nuts for adjusting your lash. Now you can see this valve and this valve are open right now, and they're here. So these valves are stuck open. Sometimes you can play around with them and get them to unfreeze, but we'll have to mess with that. Let's roll the engine over and see if any of this other stuff is jammed, if we can get these to kind of snap back. Good, I was starting to get worried. There was a couple of these I haven't seen move yet. Now these should also be twisting as well as going up and down. I see some of them doing that, but not all of them. Let me see if I can convince a couple of these to go down. That one is stuck. Where are we at on all these? Let's see if we can get this one to pop down. Okay. All right, looks like they're all up against where they're supposed to be. Now, are they gonna stay that way? That one's stuck again. Let's get some spray after these and we'll move on to a couple other things. Let me back you on up. Okay, let's see what it would take to get this to come off. Looks like the oil pump is these two. Be nice to get that off, not a complete requirement. All right, that broke free. So that's good. I've often contemplated on the Plymouth that I have back home on taking this, running it to an oil filter, and then into the pump. But always been afraid of affecting the flow of the engine. Okay. Let's see. Are we able to get this to come out? I wouldn't have bet on the other ones, but we'll see. Oh, wow. Okay. You're so close to being able to get this out. I wonder, this here is actually one of the two motor mounts. So you have the motor mount that's on that big bracket we took off. And then we have this and then another one of these on the other side. Let's see if we can get this to thread out of the block. Nope. That's all right. That's okay. I would like to see, is this threaded out all the way? I would like to see if we can get the other end of this pipe out. I would like to see if we can get this other end of the pipe out. Let's turn this over like this. See what we can do. Oh, that is just gross inside there. I don't know if you can tell, I am trying to avoid taking this oil pan off, but it is inevitable. There's just not a whole lot to grab onto. It's just nothing to grab onto. Oh, wait. I wonder if that doesn't go in there. I wonder if that's just like a press fitting or something. Well, I think the time is upon us. We're gonna have to roll this thing over, take off that pan, take a look at the bottom end. Just about everything on this engine is either 9/16 or 1/2 inch. No washer on that one. Okay. Moment of truth or sad. Oh yeah. Oh. Oh man. Oh. Oh yeah. All right. So the oil pickup tube. So that is just a pass-through. Okay. The oil pickup tube goes to this pickup that is completely packed full of muck. I can see the camshaft I can see the spiral gear that runs the oil pump. I can see the giant lobe that runs the fuel pump. Quite honestly, this bottom end, oh look, found a walnut. I will put that there. All right, sorry I don't have the light to really show you what we have going on here, and it very much looks worse than it is. And that's including this very, very disgusting looking stuff dripping out of the pickup screen. So looking at the bearings, everything looks nice and tight. I don't see a lot of play in anything. What is kind of interesting is all the rod bolts are studs with cotter pins and castle nuts. That's kind of cool. Let me get over onto the other side. So, yeah, everything here looks fairly good. I honestly think we might be able to rebuild this and breathe some life back into this. But it is going to take quite a bit of cleaning to do so. Playing around with the, oh boy, a little tight there. Playing around with the cam and touching the cam lobes, I don't feel any scrapes or gouging on the cam lobes. Everything feels smooth. I think if we tear it down the rest of the way, we should be able to, well, that's concerning. In the oil pickup screen, I found half a cotter pin. So we have that to contend with. But let's see if we can finish taking out the oil filtration and see where we want to go next. So there's a screen in here, and it looks like there's a cotter pin and a little spring that holds that into place. And that is just completely gummed up. It kind of reminds me of Volkswagen Beetles, the old air-cooled ones. They have a screen like this that's essentially their oil filter. Let's get this cotter pin out of here. That should enable this to come out. And there's 4 holes in this thing. Now I'd imagine these 4 holes are probably the siphon for the pump. Sometimes it works. Oh. Well, I imagine I don't need this anymore. Set that over there with all the other tools. All right. So this can go in there. I think that's going to do it for us today. I'm really interested to see what your guys' thoughts are for this engine. Should I spend a year and a half cleaning it up, rebuild it, and get it running? If we rebuild it, we're going to have to make new manifolds, so maybe I'll make a header. Maybe go with a downdraft intake instead of an updraft. I don't know. Let me know what you think, and I'm going to spend some time figuring out what's next for this engine, but it would not have run how I bought it. Probably would have died quickly if I didn't do this with it. But I think it is salvageable. I think it was running when they took it out of the car, and then it just sat in a field and mice and everything nature got to it. But next time we'll pull the crank, the pistons, we'll take the front cover off, look at the timing set. I could kind of see the gears a little bit when looking through this window. Gears look good, but I can only see maybe an inch of the gear at a time, and I can't see the crank gear. I can only see the camshaft gear. But everything looks promising, looks salvageable, which is really cool. Until next time, take care. Like I said, leave in the comments below what you think I should do with this. Continue tearing it apart and rebuild it, or just salvage what I can from it and do something else cool. Take care.